Good morning and afternoon, depending on where you're at. I hope everybody had an amazing Memorial Day weekend. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you. My name is Cameron Starman. I'm the Director of Client Management for Clovity, and I will be your moderator today. We have Chris Medina from Clovity and Chris Peoples from PP&A, who will be presenting our first webinar in our collaborative Innovation Unleashed series. And today we will be focused on navigating innovation today to build value for tomorrow. So basically, technologies like blockchain, IoT, AI, machine learning, and advanced analytics, they're all revolutionizing enterprise capabilities and workflows. And while many of these are considered disruptors, Chris People and Chris Medina, they will show you how these companies are effectively harnessing these technologies to future-proof their capabilities. And today we'll start by kind of examining these technologies and use cases from a high-level perspective. And over the next few months, take a deep dive into all these technologies presented here today throughout our Innovation Unleashed series. And our goal is really just to provide a well-rounded understanding of these innovations, but also provide a strategy for developing your own enterprise use cases this year. A few key reminders before we start. I know I've called them out already a couple of times, but here's a new one. So please, for all questions, put them in the chat box. I will make sure that I read those out to the presenters during the designated QA periods. And if anything doesn't get covered, I will let you know how to follow that up with us, and we will make sure that we do get you the answers you're looking for. And then also post this, I will be circulating as well as provide a place to download this recording from our website. And guys, please make sure you're on mute as much as possible. We're gonna have a lot of people on today. We don't want too many interesting noises in the background. So to jump over to the agenda, we're gonna start today with a quick introduction of Chris Medina and Chris Peoples, go into the evolution of Industry 1.0 to 4.0, and then we're gonna cover blockchain, Internet of Things, advanced analytics and business intelligence, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and as well as cover managing how to deal with this disruption and how to really leverage this innovation going forward. So now I'm going to kick it over to Chris Medina and get this started for everybody.
Thank you, Cameron. Greatly appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for joining us. As Cameron said, my name is Chris Medina. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Clovity. Clovity is a San Francisco-based IoT software platform company. We specialize in IoT solutions for retail, financial services, healthcare, and industrial like smart cities. But a little bit by way of my background, I've got about 20 years with Fortune 500 companies building innovation labs, innovation teams, and in essence, building out next generation technologies. Really, my job with Clovity is to drive strategy around new technologies and new areas, obviously within this disruptor. So we are not only seeing the disruptor, we are actually positioned ourselves to be that as our primary business. Clovity's strategy really in this space is to drive practical insights by connecting into edge assets, a lot of those sensors in the world, and enabling that change in support paradigms, operations, and even deploying new channels of businesses using this strategy, increasing scalable efficiencies and creating entirely new IoT products for the market. Right now, we're listed as one of the fastest growing IoT companies for 2019 and 2018, and really look for this disruption to continue for the next unforeseeable future. With that, I will turn it over to my partner here, Chris Peoples.
Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, depending on where you guys are. I do hope that you guys enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend, and I want to thank you guys also from my side for joining today. So I'm the founding and managing partner of a boutique strategy consulting company and IT solutions provider called PP&A. So we work at the intersections of strategy, investment banking, and technology. So what does that mean? So we have been involved with a variety of Fortune 100 organizations looking to make strategic investment decisions and shape market strategies around both kind of conventional means of growth as well as looking at some of the new innovative technologies. So when we're talking about kind of engaging and understanding how these technologies and how innovation can be used to help kind of shape and grow business, especially kind of thinking about it from an organizational perspective, understanding kind of the trade-offs, the business value, the business cases, those are all things that we've had a variety of kind of engagements in and supported a variety of organizations in kind of defining. So I myself have personally been involved in developing over $4 billion of assets and supporting acquisitions in and around both innovative technologies as well as some of the more conventional technologies. I'm a business major by background, but I'm also a technologist in the sense that I'm a avid coder. So as we dig into today's topics and the webinar series in general, we do look forward to working together with the various participants to figure out, how we can make this as valuable as possible for the participants. So with that, I wanted to first start off by providing everybody with a bit of a foundation in terms of kind of how we came up with this concept of innovation unleashed. So this webinar series is essentially at a high level based upon this figure. So over the course of this webinar today, we're going to be covering a variety of topics kind of in and around data, the utilization of data, understanding how to collect it, how to analyze it, what's the value of it. And this essentially kind of provides a bit of a playing field in terms of moving from data collection to transformation and storage, data analytics, as well as then at the back end using the data to essentially drive events and outputs. So today we're going to kind of provide a bit of a high-level foundation, or we're going to cover some of these topics which are within this framework. So we're going to be touching upon blockchain technology, we're going to be touching upon IoT, we're going to be touching upon advanced analytics, business intelligence, as well as artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, but kind of all in this context of finding ways to gather and harness data in new ways to make new results and business outcomes. So with that being said, the first topic that we're going to go into is blockchain technology. Oh, sorry, nope. First, we're going to start with the evolution of Industry 1.0 to 4.0.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Not a problem. And we thought this would be good to set a context just kind of as an abstract. Obviously, with Industry 1.0 and advent of steam engines and manufacturing and where we've evolved, and when you think about it to today's world of the industry of 4.0 and the Industrial Revolution, I like to call it the Jetsons phase, where basically if you're old enough to remember the Jetsons, you believe that someday you'll see that technology. That's really my dream, is to see all the things in the Jetsons come true. So I looked at it and kind of from our point of view is that, with the fourth phase of the Industrial Revolution, more globalization, more technology than ever before, we'll start to, obviously, if not already, seeing more and more where machines can talk to each other and people can interact with the data through connected devices. And when you think about it from an innovation disruptor perspective, you start to think about how well, users connect with this based on, how normal it then becomes in their life. I obviously, think that both connected devices and AI and machine learning will become an integral part of everyday life. From a Fitbit to, Alexa, to any of the technologies that are out there today, we've really kind of moved upon that area of the world today. So that area of technology, can extend to the sensors on the roads or in your car, even sensors that can help detect, healthcare like cancer or diabetes. But really, it's due to the technological disruption of things like 5G, IoT, AI, machine learning and blockchain, that data will start to drive the next level of, practical use and full-scale capabilities of all these technologies. So it's not that some of these things didn't exist before, it's just now at a cost level, and also with the advent of 5G being that next technology, we start to see them start to rapidly evolve. And the question always becomes, how do I manage the disruption? How do I become part of that innovation? And if we understand that, data and sort of that next level of technology and providing meaningful action in everyday activities, we start to understand how we can manage it in our world and how we can manage it in our companies. In our view, connected devices are in essence going to connect everything from machines to every living thing on Earth. So for that kind of disruption, you have to start to look very specific at each use case and kind of each area that you're really starting to go at. We'll start that by talking a little bit about blockchain with Chris Peoples.
We wanted to start with blockchain because this technology has kind of been gaining a lot of publicity. I mean, there's been a lot of hype surrounding it. A lot of misconceptions as well. Especially when you're talking about kind of some of the speculative natures around the cryptocurrencies and some of the dark web applications, and if you look at the technology itself, just kind of cutting through the fluff and kind of getting to, the brass tacks of it, blockchain is essentially a database. And it's different from traditional databases. So in some ways comparable to cloud databases in the sense that it can live on multiple systems at one time, but it's also a write-only database, which means that you can only add increments to the database. So typically you have create, read, update, and delete in terms of database functions. Within the blockchain space, all you have is the create and read. So why does this particular function, create a unique value proposition, and why does this have people talking about blockchain the way that they do, and why are people so excited? So we've been working within the space for around 2 years. We've recently launched a market intelligence platform on the topic. I lead a couple of working groups within the DC area on this topic. But essentially what you have here is you have a technology which, through its characteristics, it helps to automate the sharing and transition of data between people, or transacting parties, or transacting machines. So essentially kind of serving as the intermediary. And by intermediary, think about it as, for example, if I wanted to send $1 from my account to Chris's account, we would need some platform or some intermediary to do that. Typically it would be a bank or some type of transaction platform like PayPal, etc. So this is because this third-party intermediary in this case is providing trust. So with blockchain technology, because its capabilities as a write-only database and because it's essentially verifiable, you are essentially automating the functions of a third-party intermediary between them. So this is important because now you have essentially reduced the transactional friction between the two transacting parties. You no longer have to involve a third-party intermediary, or you greatly reduce the involvement of a third-party intermediary, and thus are able to achieve quicker transitions of data, which you can trust, thereby reducing the overall cost structures. So this is why that reduction of transactional friction, using blockchain technology to reduce transactional friction and create or automate data exchanges between parties, is why it has a lot of people talking about or very interested in the technology itself. So the way I like to kind of characterize it is blockchain technology is to transactions between parties what the autonomous vehicle is to the transportation sector. And just like the transportation sector and the autonomous vehicle, there's going to be a good amount of guessing and checking and testing and development work which needs to happen in order for the technology to really reach maturity and be applied to its maximum potential.
Yeah, those are some great points, Chris. And I definitely see through our clients, certainly in financial services, making a huge investment into blockchain and really kind of scoping out the work of what they can do to lend their innovation to that disruption. A lot of times, even in IoT space, certainly we get pulled in where we're looking at a new implementation of blockchain. So we're starting to see that same connection. So near and dear to my heart, obviously, what is IoT and what is 5G? I thought I'd give just a quick 101 very quickly and kind of where we see the market going with these two areas. Obviously, 5G is really the largest enabler, in our view, in our opinion, of what's happening with IoT and all the connected devices. It's obviously the next generation cellular service. It's obviously growing in the number of connected devices because 5G is now going to be out there. It's 20 times faster, if you will, than 4G LTE, where you're looking at peak minimum download speeds of 20 gigs, while 4G is still sitting at somewhere around 1 gig, and it's again milliseconds here. And really why we believe that that's going to be a big deal and why you see the number 2020 out here is because that's when most of your telcos will have 5G fully rolled out. I know that AT&T is about 19 or 20 different cities rolled out right now with 5G. Verizon's and T-Mobile's of the world are quickly fast following, and new entrants and new folks coming into the market like Dish Network with their 5G spectrum also looking to hit that 2020 mark. And really for that purpose, it allows you to efficiently and much more robustly manage that network and all of the data that goes onto it. Now you can start looking at data in a narrowband perspective versus data that is used to carry massive amounts of peak loads like video and content in a much more efficient way. It's going to enable things from a content video perspective and also just data in general that you couldn't do with 4G. So the innovation of even 5G coming out is going to start creating new industry products that haven't been invented before because the technology wasn't there. Now that the network is there, you start to now see all of these boutiques starting to pop up and create their use cases very, reliant on a 5G type of service. Think of students in, Stanford who are, or any community college, if that matter, learning how to do, surgery in a VR kind of manner where surgery is happening maybe in Germany and, because of the connectivity and looking at even, East Coast to West Coast, the viewpoints of what's happening can be done real time, and folks can actually take advantage of that content being able to move in sub-seconds. The IoT aspect of this, obviously, this is the network of devices, anything that's put into vehicles, home appliances, they all contain electronics and software and sensors and actuators and connectivities that allow them to talk to each other and interact with that exchange data. This is where we're seeing the creativity of AI and machine learning that we'll talk a little bit further in this presentation. But just as a graphic, in a year from now, these are things that we see happening in our point of view, and even pushing that out to 2025, we'll start to see again an increase in this area. 4 billion estimated connected people, 4 trillion in revenue opportunity. Again, speaks to that new marketplace where channels are starting to be created as a result of connected vehicles or connected devices. 25+ million new applications. I look at this back in the age of the digital revolution, where we started to see apps that are just being created. Now these apps are serving more purposeful creation because we're starting to see them now intersect with devices and hardware, as well as actual logic and machine learning. So from those come new devices and new applications that will run those. 25+ billion embedded and intelligent systems. So we're getting into now the realm of EUIC cards and embedded SIM cards, where even that in itself can listen to 12 different networks and profiles without ever having to swap them out. So, opportunity exists there with, being able to separate the network with all your devices, and again, introduce more things that need to talk to the internet or other products. 50 trillion in gigabytes of data. I mean, that's massive when you think about it from a global perspective of where all of this data is going and what's being used to work it. Security is going to obviously be a huge business for this industry, a new business, something that in essence has never really been done for data in flight on this level. Certainly you've got, encryption and you've got mesh technology and things like that. But now that we've gotten to another level of computation and logic and machine learning, IoT and 5G being, that new part of it will start to drive new business cases and also new business models. So that's kind of the 101 on 5G and sort of the IoT world and kind of where we see the next year and even the next 5 years as being our growth market. Next.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Sorry, that one, somehow that one ended up out of order. Apologies, guys. I'll go back to that one at the end.
Worries.
Okay.
All right. So you can see we've talked a lot about data and utilizing it, capturing it, via new IoT sensors. But wanted to spend just kind of a quick second, kind of re-examining data analytics at its core. Kind of what are some of the elements, or what is the difference between, for example, just traditional data analytics and advanced data analytics? And where does business intelligence fit into all of this? And what about big data? So we put together a small little chart here. The data analytics spectrum, kind of moving from left to right, looking at the different types of analytics, so descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And you can see that essentially you're kind of moving from traditional analytics into advanced data analytics as you move to the right of that x-axis. On the y-axis, you have the organizational value and the complexity. So, kind of as you continue to kind of move into this advanced data analytics category, so too, at times you'll be increasing the complexity, but also increasing the organizational value, if you're able to do it in an effective manner. So, big data in its sense, understanding what big data is, or being able to differentiate that from traditional data. Traditional data, is essentially kind of manageable streams of data, which, we're kind of typically used to. So whether that be transactions kind of flowing, on kind of an ongoing basis, whether that be customer usage, customer website traffic, just a variety of things. But when we get into the big data element, we get into a whole different ballpark in terms of volume, variety, velocity, and volatility. So, some of you may recognize 3 of those V's from the original concept, which was characterized by Doug Laney from Gartner a while back. The other kind of V that I think would be is helpful to kind of understand big data is volatility. But when you're talking about big data, you're talking about just massive quantities of data which are coming in, and generally are unstructured. It's not kind of you have a customer, you have a transaction, you have a price, you have a date. No, you have all kinds of new types of data, and the speed at which this data is coming in is essentially in real time. So kind of understanding and then adding the additional component of volatility in terms of irregular cycles of data coming in, when you're accounting for periods or seasonal flows. That's kind of where the big data category gets to be. So being able to apply advanced analytics then to big data in order to create those predictive and prescriptive analytics is then where organizations today are currently seeking opportunities. So, and depending on kind of what it is that you're looking at, you may be, further or further along in terms of the overall maturity as opposed to maybe another sector. So when you're thinking about the layers of analytics, so that's kind of the second chart that we have here on the right-hand bottom side, these are the elements which are essentially being analyzed when you're talking about data. So you have machine elements which are producing data, you have human behavioral elements which are producing data, and then you have the environment from which you're able to kind of produce data. So being able to leverage or understand data from those three layers effectively and use the analytics to essentially produce those functions, whether those be descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, or prescriptive, will then add to that value. So when you're talking about an autonomous vehicle, for example, we would say that, this type of concept essentially touches all three of those layers. So machine to environment, when you're talking about the car itself, understanding what environment it is in terms of the road to make decisions, and then as well as the human elements, whether the driver itself or the other drivers on the road, to be able to kind of understand, hey, where is my best, based upon the data that I'm collecting right now, how do I need to control this car? Thinking about another example, for example, a call center, I think this provides a good example of where some things can still be evolved. So, typically, a call center is essentially pretty mature in the sense of a human to machine interaction. So looking at that intersection right there. But thinking about, what a call center does today, you already have some predictive analytics, you already have some diagnostic information, you have some descriptive analytics, but how about folding in the environmental aspect as well to really get into the prescriptive side of the house? So the example being when a customer is calling, for example, in a helpline, why not understand or have the system be able to understand the environment, the customer's environment, before they call or when they call, and already provide a solution before having to route them to a certain customer service representative. So for example, a customer calls and the system says, oh, Mr. Peoples, we see that there have been some strange transactions, or we see that you have seen this type of activity on your account. Is this the issue that you're calling about, or can we do this for you? So essentially, already having a plan in mind when the customer is calling, and the level of accuracy being kind of the success driver there. But just thinking about those intersections between human, machine, and environment, and using data analytics more and more to be able to drive outcomes is where the new value of tomorrow's world is going to come in. So that is something that we're working together to try to define for organizations through our activities. So.
Excellent, and very well timed. I think now in the age of Alexa and all the connected devices, I know my connected smart appliances today, tell the retailer that I bought it from when a filter is needed, and basically it just notifies me and tells me, hey, one is being shipped to you. So again, kind of that normalization of life. Analytics have obviously been around for a long time, but as Chris mentions, we're now in that overlap of why not have the machine tell us when something's going to happen so that we could take proactive measures and do something a little different in the industry. When we look at AI and machine learning and truly the disruptors here, it's really, that's where we see the peak of this disruption is really the creativity of AI and the creativity of what you want these machines to do, and really kind of overlay that with learning and decisions and thought. It's clear that's obviously an intersection between IoT, AI, and machine learning. IoT, as I mentioned before, is all about connecting machines and making the use of that data, whereas AI is about, creating that simulated intelligent behavior. And and making that thought process a little bit better each time that it does it. And that's what makes it so great. And really the creativity of the developers are the disruption. You could have AI and do something very simple, but it's really not a disruptor if it's not changing the way it's supposed to learn or changing the way it understands the patterns of those things, which is where machine learning comes in. The AI components of for example, cameras and video and facial recognition are starting to come to fruition in many industries, be it smart cities or healthcare or even farming with like herd tracking. It can definitely identify in real time, based on facial recognition, a lot of elements that, creatively were developed by an AI technician. In this display, just in real time, I walked by a camera with AI that basically could tell me what my hair color was, what my gender was, facial expression, language speaking, that I was actually speaking English, the percent of my mood factor, so 99% I was happy, I was wearing eyeglasses, what kind of clothing I was wearing, and it was all done in real time, plus the age. Well, it almost got the age right. It said I was 40, which I really like because I'm actually 47. But, those types of things get smarter and smarter, and it's being able to be done at the edge because of the network, and it's being able to be done while being connected to a cloud. So these things become the disruptor, but then I go back to how do you manage it? You manage it with the resources and the creative people who understand AI and can deliver these types of things. This becomes almost a vital use case for any chief marketing officer in retail to tell them really real time and notify, when it knows these things. So if it knew every single day what walked into its really offered to that person based on multiple factors. And these are just easy factors. We haven't even gotten into the creativity aspect of integration of loyalty, integration of CRM, and other areas that retail really depends on. Same thing with emergency services. How can this thwart off any type of attack or violence or even crime, help stop crime? So a lot of things that couldn't be done 10 years ago is now being done almost on the fly. So with machine learning, obviously that gives us the ability to detect some of those patterns and learn those patterns. Just as Chris had mentioned, the complexity starts to get interesting, and the size and the scope of the data, that you want to actually start to do something with. Again, that's the true disruptor, not the fact that we have analytics. That's what we're going to be doing with it, with things like machine learning and AI. Those are going to be the disruptors. And it's going to be something that touches all aspects of industry and all aspects of life. Alexa, when it very first came out, was, kind of an annoying product, but now it starts to become the backbone of several things that they expect it to be as part of AI and machine learning. And so you can see how normalized things start to become when you start to integrate these into useful use cases. So that's really kind of the 101 in our strategy around machine learning and IoT. Next. So what does that mean? So managing the innovation, which is what we started this topic about, and where that disruption is. It's less about identifying where the actual disruption is and more about how you're going to get there and what it's going to look like once you do get there. So in my point of view, when I think about disruption, I think about incubators, I think about hackathons, I think about areas where you have the resources available in order to go and develop on some of those disruptors. If you look at the last decade, where our situation is today, the digital transformation led the innovation. It was our disruption category touching every industrial, global, and social behavior. The economy, e-commerce took over. It was literally taking that e-commerce transaction channel and putting it onto our mobile phones, putting it into tablets, and really kind of connecting those experiences. Social really drove everything that we've done and has become massive channel for change. And it really touched everything from a global perspective. What you're starting to see is that, and in our point of view, AI, IoT, machine learning, blockchains, these will all be disruptors in a greater way than the digital transformation, if you can imagine that. just in its nature of innovation. It's all built to learn, it's all built to be smarter, and it's all built to anticipate and create decisions over and over and over again. This is what will shape our lives and our well-being in many ways, and establish an entirely new brand of use cases and technology that has never before been possible, because as I mentioned before, the technology wasn't there or the cost was a factor. Nowadays, technology is there, cost isn't that big of a factor, and you can get to just about any use case you like using these capabilities creatively. But how will it be managed, and how will it be built? Who will lead it? And how will it change our people, our process, and the technology that underlines it? Again, this is kind of where we see our clients intersecting with us every single day and saying, hey, we want to be part of this disruption. We want to be part of this innovation. Tell us how to do it. And just like any culture who's innovative and kind of tagged that way, we think that with our processes, you must be able to test fast and fail fast to reiterate. The reason being is no one gets it right the first time. We're not looking to the major giants to go figure out IoT and all of those disruptors like AI. They're giving us definitely some of the larger tools to go do this. But in the disruption, you start to find boutiques that will create these things as part of that disruption and really get to faster ways of partnering up and creating that platform or creating that solution. They can do it faster than the larger chip companies, the larger sensor companies, even the larger institutions that are, investing billions of dollars into blockchain. A lot of the lessons that you take from those failures should be just as valuable to you as lessons that you take from the successes of those things. Any innovative culture or company will tell you, what did the past decade teach us? Within, innovation on the digital transformation world, we found that we can create an app that does just about anything, including, turn on a rice cooker. But do we need that? We really don't. So why go out and time just to be novel and expect a trend and try to be part of that trend? You need to really kind of set out yourself and really look at what are going to be the things that the past has taught us in order to build the future. You should utilize your data analytics as much as possible. We have found that many of these companies are using it as a brand new channel in order to better understand what's happening in the world and better understand what's happening with their business. It's far more likely to be right. Data is data. It's empirical. It's the new gold. And, they're going to be better suited to quantify what your ROI is, what your projects are going to be, and what the things that you're going to go do in this disruption. Then you're going to get some highest paid person giving you their opinion. Certainly the direction of leadership's there, but honestly, when you go and start looking at what are the companies that are being successful in these disruptions, they're looking at the statistics and the data that's being gathered by much of these sensors and much of these disruptors. Consortiums, incubations, as I mentioned in the past, innovation hubs, they're all beaming with talent. They all have new ideas on how to utilize AI, how to utilize machine learning. We are working on trying to create a hackathon with our platform, as a matter of fact, and they'll actually bend that disruption to their will in order to shape and reshape its purpose and create new capabilities. This is truly, in my opinion, where the disruption begins. Finding those talent, finding those resources and those people who understand how to do so. If you're not innovating in the same way as everyone else, you're not innovating. That means if you're doing the same things as trends are, and you are innovating in that same way as everyone else is, you're not innovating. Innovation is defined as being different in our mind, and so that's how you manage it. You work on trying to, again, test fast, fail fast, reiterate, and also take those lessons learned from the past into the future, while still trying to find the best and the brightest talent that can bend that innovation in your way. So that's how we look at managing some of that innovation and disruption. Next.
And if I can add some of those, some points to that, really kind of getting started in innovation, innovation doesn't just happen. Hey, when you're talking about consortiums, incubations, thinking about it from an organizational perspective, in terms of how organizations make decisions, organizations have objectives. Organizations have strategies which are already put forth. So finding ways to align innovative efforts or innovative explorations around those efforts kind of gets to be, a key starting point for organizations looking to start building an innovative culture within their organization. So, when you're talking about leveraging machine learning and IoT and artificial intelligence, a lot of times, it can seem like a bit of a black box, but, the way that we kind of approach it, there are plenty of ways to kind of invest a little and learn a lot, in order to kind of get the ball rolling. So, when you're talking about getting to some of the further or, becoming a best practice innovation organization, it doesn't happen from, now, it doesn't happen in 1 week, it doesn't happen in 1 month, but it's something that has to be kind of fostered and cultivated over time. And, I think some of the first steps, some of the first phases are to start participating in some of those grassroots events. So getting into the hackathons, starting to do some of the first explorations, building some initial partnerships to develop and start deploying some pilots. Because all those other things in terms of attracting the right types of talent and kind of being able to kind of leverage and build those within the organization, you're not going to be able to do that until you've kind of established where you want the innovation to take the organization. So, that's why kind of finding some of those areas to invest a little and learn a lot, which align with organizational strategy and organizational objectives. So, for example, there may be an organizational directive that says, hey, within the next 5 years, we're going to grow our customer base by 50%. Okay, so, you don't have to subscribe your entire 50% growth to leveraging innovation to be able to do that. But for strategic elements of capital toward that specific objective will help you kind of thin out the herd in terms of solutions which are out there to be able to achieve that. So, starting off and kind of getting the foundations right, I think requires being kind of having some type of upfront exploration where these things are, where some of the first building blocks could be. And then over time, you'll see that, just like with anything else, you'll start having more shape in terms of, hey, what it is that you want to achieve. The resources will start flowing in terms of the experienced personnel, because you have a clarity in terms of kind of what the objective is that they are to pursue. So, another thing, and one more thing that I'd like to add, the innovation community, the technologists out there, they're technologists. They don't have 10 to 15 years of, industry experience necessarily, right? So when you're talking about building innovation for a specific industry, it's going to take some partnership. Hey, there's going to be some learnings on both sides. So, the blockchain industry, I think is a very, very kind of good example in that, especially looking in the energy environment. So, the energy sector, for example, is very, very diverse in the sense that, you have everything from producing, actual electricity all the way through to complex, retail and wholesale systems at the back end, which are then used to kind of buy and sell electricity from, both organizations to end consumers. But, thinking about the technologists in the background, who are, building blockchain, based technologies, they don't understand, the ins and outs of the energy value chain, what some of the current considerations are about the industry, enough to be able to, really kind of shape their solutions or even communicate their solutions to the actual end users many times. So, finding those partnerships and kind of finding ways to play a leading role in communicating and shaping those solutions will also kind of create a bit of a competitive advantage if you're able to do that effectively.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chris. Very comprehensive. Some of the takeaways that we wanted to leave behind as we kind of wrap up here and get ready for some Q&A, really kind of look at the unique and relevant strategy. You know, don't hop on any bandwagons and try to be part of every new trend. Find incubators and creative talent that look to, you know, bend the disruption to their will. Really look at innovation as a means to achieve your strategic goals, and failure is an option, as I mentioned before. You want to learn from those and fail fast, but iterate faster. Innovators, I should say, are leaders. These are the ones that you want to put in the hands of, you know, your creative thought process and give you that competitive advantage. And it's gained by doing something different from the competition. It's going to be those creative people who understand, you know, how to connect the technologies to make this disruption work. You can't get this by copying competitors. You have to strike it out and do something genuinely novel. So that's our webinar for today. Wanted to turn it back over to our moderator, the talented Cameron, and he can see if we've got a few questions or any other ideas or questions that we can jump onto with the remaining period here. But we wanted to also call out that we do have this as a series, obviously, as we said from the very beginning. So go to our websites. We put both of our websites up here to see our next webinar series. And if you have any questions, I have my contact here. Chris has his contact as well. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to give any kind of thought leadership as well. So back to you, Cameron.
Hey, thank you guys so much. So I did get one question sent over to me. I'll start with that. So what do you think are the most crucial technologies coming out that we've covered today that are going to be affecting smart cities and how people interact with their environment?
Yeah, I can take that. That's a great question. My viewpoint is that you're going to have security play a huge role in the data transformation, sensors and citizens. So in what we're starting to see is a consolidation of, you know, operating systems and also technology with security. I think it's going to be the sensor world that is going to start to see that evolution. A lot of network providers like AT&T, Verizon, they have their standards for what they would want to see your sensor device, whatever you create, to be certified onto their network. But you're starting to see more disruption in the areas of security, being able to live, you know, seamlessly with your solution, be it in the device, be it locked up with the device, be it on the OS, or even on the network itself, tapping the network to be able to pull that data out. So in my opinion, I think application and all those things remain pretty much the same as they are today. But definitely the device and what you can do the moment you start to extract it from a security perspective, I think is going to be one of the most key important factors in leading the IoT world and smart cities in particular.
Maybe just to add on to that, I mean, thinking about it from a blockchain perspective, you know, smart cities, the transactional element, the transactional components, I think also, or blockchain provides a very unique solution for that. When you, especially when you start getting into some of these micro transactions and peer-to-peer transactions. So, you know, a lot of it is kind of being able to really kind of interconnect a variety of ecosystems to be able to improve the lives of the city inhabitants. You know, whether that's being able to seamlessly share the electricity from your electric vehicle with the power grid, you know, or to maybe even charge for, you know, street lights, you know, as you use them. You know, those elements, those are quick and decentralized transactions, you know, which happen, you know, relatively frequently between parties. And yes, security does play an extremely large role in that, but that's why I think blockchain can provide a very interesting and unique solution to be able to facilitate those types of decentralized transactions, you know, not just between individual users, but machines. So, you know, I think a lot of the transactions which are actually going to be happening, it's not going to be somebody at the helm anymore. who presses a button that says, okay, well, I want, this and this to happen with my electric vehicle, especially as we build in or continue to fold in additional elements from AI and kind of machine learning, it'll self-optimize. So, some folks will have it on autopilot. Some will probably want a little bit more control. But, I think all of them play, a pretty significant role within the smart city context. So that I think is, something that we'll be exploring more and deeper in the coming webinars.
Yep, and a good case study, Cameron, and for those out there to look at is the country of Estonia. They turned their entire government and government services over to blockchain. It was done by a company called Time. They are a strategic partner of Clovity, helping us in healthcare using blockchain. But they, in essence, led the turnover of an entire city to a disruption technology like blockchain, and by themselves as being, in essence, for those services, unhackable. So that's a huge claim to make, but at the same time, it is a massive overhaul of their internal infrastructure, and in reality has turned out for the better. So that's another case study to take a look at, the country of Estonia.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And guys, thanks for that question. I got another one for you. How do you see the convergence of blockchain and IoT evolving?
Certainly. For things like, and Chris mentioned this in security, where we're starting to see a lot of it is in the authentication process. So if I wanted to monitor and add, sensors that, had specific rules that were related to them, I could use kind of the blockchain to authenticate those resources. I could also use them to authenticate with other products, other connected device. Think of telemedicine. If we wanted to utilize blockchain as kind of a back-end EHR system, I can use the QR code to go to a telemedicine kiosk and basically hand over all of my health records. So by connecting those devices, it's really just a matter of allowing those devices to talk. By creating the protocols around blockchain and the rules for what can talk to it, I think you can create a secure connection, as Chris said, illuminated before.
Yeah. So I mean, what we're getting at here is blockchain in this sense is kind of used as an identity component. So to essentially create a valid and secure identity, not just for individuals, but for respective sensors, data elements which are coming back and forth. Because when you think about the phrase garbage in, garbage out, as we continue to develop and deploy additional sensors into our ecosystem, how do we understand, or how do we ensure that data that the integrity of that data is good, and it becomes very crucial because I mean, hacking into that and the security element of ensuring that integrity, that data will then be used to automate transactions or automate events within the overall ecosystem. So within this context, blockchain provides a way to create identities and facilitate transactions between parties and add an additional layer of security, which is essentially managed on a decentralized scale or on a decentralized basis.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I just want to put it out. Is there any other further questions that we can answer for anybody that's on the line right now? All right, guys. Looks like we've come to the end of this. So thank you so very much for coming in with us today and listening to Chris Medina and Chris Peoples. I just wanted to let everybody know that I will be sending out a copy of this deck at the end, along with the recording of this call. So we'll make that available to you. You can also download it from our website as well, www.clovity.com under webinars. And then I will also be sending out a survey with that accompanying email. So please take some time if you can, fill that out. You can add any further questions that you have there. And then also we will be sending a little token of our appreciation, just a little Amazon gift card for filling that out. So the first 10 people will make sure to get that sent over to you if you get that information over to us. Thanks so much, guys, and we really appreciate it. I hope to see you at the next webinar. We are planning to do it in July, and that will be focused on blockchain. We will get those dates out to you shortly.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.